It's time to make the video. Hello all you beautiful people out there, what is going on? This is your friend Brittany coming just fast with another video, and today we are going to be comparing Predecessor versus Fault. Because you guys really want to know my opinion for some weird reason, and so I shall give it to you. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I'm going to talk about a lot. It took me a while to come up with these thoughts. I spent all weekend playing and streaming these different games. If you guys missed that out, please check it out on twitch.tv/BriticHD. We stream every day now, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, weekdays, and then weekends we stream as much as we possibly can. Streams have been absolutely insane, and I finally gathered all the information that I wanted in preparation for this video that we can go back on the daily YouTube video grind starting next week as well. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Drop a like if you do, and let's get right into it. Before we get into the comparisons between Predecessor and Fault, I wanted to give an honorable mention to Overprime. It's a good game, developed by a lot of talented individuals. Well, not even a lot, just a handful really, which really goes to show at how crazy their talent really is. They created a good game, a fun game, but not for me. I personally did not enjoy it, and nothing really drew me towards playing it past the first week of its launch. I've kept up with streams, and other people have tried to get me into it. My friends have played it as well, told me about it as well, and I've watched streams from them as well. But I just couldn't get myself to play it one more time. Good game, but once again, not for me, and therefore it's not going to be in this video for the comparison because I did not play it myself, and I cannot give you an honest opinion about it. Probably moving forward as well, I just don't think I'm ever going to get into it because it's just the general style, the way the games just go and flow, and just the general thesis on which the game is built upon just doesn't suit my needs when it comes to playing the games I want to play. And therefore, I most likely will not be covering too much more Overprime news going forward. If you want more Overprime news, you can check out my buddy Mangoose. He also does news videos for Paragon 2 projects, and he's a really funny guy as well. Now, with that honorable mention out of the way, let's compare Predecessor to Fault, and I broke it down into 5 categories. I broke it down into visuals, gameplay and feedback, item system, map design and jungle, and the Paragon feeling / fun of the game. So those are the 5 categories that we will talk about. We'll tally up the points at the end and explain which one you should play and why. Now for the first one, let's talk about visuals. And for me, visuals aren't always the most important thing in the game, but it is important for a game to look clean, especially one that is trying to follow the footsteps of Paragon, a game that was notorious for looking stupidly beautiful. Now, when it came time for the HUD design, it's not a contest that upon launch of the even first closed alpha weekend, which was a week before the early access for Fault was released, Predecessor already had a HUD up and going, and it looked very clean. It looked really nice. You had all the information you needed on it, and I really enjoyed looking at it. I didn't really find any issues with it whatsoever. You could have some quality of life changes, but overall you had everything you needed, and it just looked really clean and really nice. Whereas upon the launch of early access for Fault, there was no HUD update. It was the same thing that we saw 3 months ago from the previous closed alpha. Now, I do have information for you guys regarding that the HUD is being outsourced to a AAA studio, and it will be in Fault within the next 2 weeks, as they say. However, upon launch, and that is what we are grading this comparison on, Predecessor had the better HUD. When it came to the menus, Predecessor didn't really allow us to explore the menus too much. When it came to the closed alphas, we kind of just had to sit there and play. On the second weekend, we were able to invite a duo partner and play duo matches with them as well. Whereas in Fault, you had a full-fledged menu UI that was really well done in my opinion. I like the panel system, and I like the shop. However, the fonts and stuff might seem a little too incomplete, and so you could expect that UI to improve as well, as it should. The Predecessor UI, from what I could tell, could also see some improvements, so it looks less like something made in Unreal Engine 4 as a spiritual successor to another game that released previously free assets. Trying to come up with a good UI is very difficult. You want something that's original, but also something that's easy to use. And both of these games still have a ways to go. However, I'm going to give this one a Predecessor simply because their HUD was complete, and because, in general, the visuals to my eye, at least, maybe I'm looking at it in a different way, I did enjoy the way that the animation and stuff looked when it came to Predecessor, when it came to the character models themselves. When it came to Fault, they were a little more inconsistent. Some characters looked really, really good. For example, Kwong, I really liked some of the animations on his abilities. And some animations like Muriel's Ultimate still need a little bit of fine-tuning to get to that level that we want, or that maybe some of you expect, maybe some of you just really, really, really want, but you know what I mean. To get to that Paragon-esque level, even though it's borderline impossible for these indie studios to get to that same AAA quality that Paragon was, since Paragon was so ahead of its time anyways. Once again, though, visuals, I'm going to give it a Predecessor. Moving on to the gameplay and feedback. This has to do with how the game felt. How did it feel, really? Remember, we got to get in there and feel it, right? How did it feel when you got hit? How did it feel when you shot people? How did it feel when you took minion aggro? How did it feel when you were skirmishing? How did team fights feel? Were there, optimization issues? Did frame drops? Stuff like that. And a lot of it is just a good combination between sound design, camera angles, and just the proper text popping up on the screen at the right times and the right font. And when it came down to it, I preferred the way Predecessor did it to the way Fault did it when it came to the gameplay feedback. I think the sound design in Predecessor was a bit better. I really enjoyed the work of Oak Owl. I think that man is borderline a genius, if not one already. And I think that the sound design was really, really, really solid. I enjoyed the announcer. I enjoyed the sound design of a lot of abilities, including Sevarog's Soul Siphon, that made it feel like you were really ripping out their souls from their husks of bodies at that point. And the camera work was really good too when you would go into the Phantom Rush with Sevarog, zoom out, zoom back in. It was really nice. And there's a lot of other examples that I'm just not going to waste time going into, but I just really enjoyed it, and it really contributed a lot to the immersion. Now, that's not to say that it was perfect. There were those things that felt a little tight or clunky, jumping on minions' head, jumping off of people. When it came to the second closed weekend alpha for Predecessor, they did remove the quote-unquote moon shoes, as I like to call them, where it seemed like everything seemed a little too floaty. If you jumped in the air, you stayed there a little long. If Sevarog hit you with his ultimate, you kind of flew in the air for a little too long. But when they turned that off, or turned it down at least anyway, and the second closed alpha, it felt much better and felt a little more responsive. Yet, there were still some funny things having to do with getting stuck on people's head after being launched to the air from Sevarog's Colossal Blow, for example. That did take away a bit from that immersion, so things like that do need to get tightened up still. Also, some things when it came to strafing back and forth, moving left and right, sometimes the legs would get jumbled a little bit on certain character models when the speed would not match up with the animations of the legs moving. Stuff like that, of course, still needed to be tightened up, but overall, nothing too crazy that really made me say, wow, this is just bad and I can't deal with it. Everything was bearable, especially for a closed alpha. It was in a really, really good state. Fault also had a decent amount of camera angles and sound design, and they try, and they even put in voice lines for some characters, some grunting noises when you would get low on health. And it didn't make it immersive, but it could also end up being annoying the way it was designed, and I most likely will end up turning off the voices in the future. However, trying to compare the same things between these both kind of sound design qualities, I don't know. I just like Predecessors more, to be honest. It's just something with my ears. I really can't put my finger on it. It just seems a bit more complete, just a bit better. Some of the sound effects in Fault seemed a little cheesy, or some might even call it cheap, but at the end of the day, they still have time to improve on that, and I believe that that would help in the feedback process. Now, when you did get low on health, there would be flashing red lights and heartbeats in both games, both Predecessor and Fault, but both games also struggled. So basically what I'm saying is, when you got hit, you had a good feedback mechanism, you had a good reaction to it, but both games still struggled with that feeling of really getting that oomph behind abilities and auto attacks. Really getting that oomph behind, yeah, I really felt that connect with my ability, right? Both Predecessor and Fault can improve on that. But when it comes to giving one to one or to the other, in my opinion, I think that the feedback, just the way it felt, just felt a bit better in Predecessor compared to Fault. Now, moving on to the item system, I'm going to give this one over to Fault because their aspect system plus their favor system is really deep and offers a variety of builds for multiple characters. It's really nice. It's not as straightforward as I'm a tank, I'm just going to build tanky items, or it's not as straightforward as I'm a carry, I'm just going to build straight up damage, and that's it. The favor system and the aspect system really plays it well hand in hand and can really give you an advantage if you do snowball. However, you could also decide how to split it up. You might want to split it up evenly, and you can focus and prioritize on certain styles and gameplays with this system rather than just building items and completing item trees. Now, the way Predecessor did it was not bad either. I enjoyed the item system, but it was definitely much simpler and did not allow for much deeper gameplay than build this, build that, and that's it. However, there's a caveat here in which Omega Studios blatantly stated that they have not included a lot of items with actives, for example, in the builds because they wanted to focus more on bugs and gameplay feel in general and worry more about the balance and the way the game plays out a little later. So there is that caveat, and we still have some stuff to expect from Predecessor in those terms. However, again, basing things off of how they released, which is how this video is basing everything, I'm going to have to give this one to Fault with their deeper system involving favor and aspects. Moving on to map design and jungle, again, another caveat here is that Predecessor stated that they do have jungle buffs in the works and they just did not put them in this current build in the closed alpha. They do have those jungle buffs in mind, and so that's why the jungle felt a little boring or just stale in the closed alpha builds of Predecessor in comparison to Fault, where you had a blue buff and a red buff and you had multiple camps in multiple locations, stacking past 2 per camp all the way up to 5 minions per camp, and you could actually go around and time the stacks and just plan out rotations a little better with invades in mind and stuff like that. The item system comes into play here again, as where Fault has a trinket system similar to League, where you have a dedicated slot to either a ward or something that could get rid of wards, such as their Radiant Pulse item that is basically a scanner that reveals anything in the shadow plane using true vision. So, for example, even if you have a Kalari that's stealth, it will reveal her as well. Whereas Predecessor didn't really have that system, and so being able to jungle with that trinket system in mind, being able to deep ward more often because you do have access to more vision, was much more enticing gameplay for me anyway when it came to being a jungle main. As you guys might know, I love playing in the jungle. Being able to just wander around in the jungle and have more variety with my strategy is very, very, very nice. Now, on top of that, I just really enjoy the jungle design in Fault more. Just blatantly my opinion, I just really enjoyed the Fault jungle design. I think it is both spacious, yet it is deliberate. You have corridors, but they do not feel too claustrophobic. And there are also some tight spaces, and there are also open areas where you can have fun and engaging combat when it came to invading, countering invades, which would end up leading to team fights, sometimes over the red buffs or the blue buffs. And it was a really nice area to fight in with plenty of elevation, plenty of ways to go left or right, and certain bits of elevation that can only be reached by certain characters like Greystone, who could leap up to that elevation. Speaking of elevation, in general, the map felt really good with no unnecessary verticality. There's a lot of verticality in the game. Some of it was placed in lanes, some of it was placed in the jungle, and none of it felt too obtrusive. You didn't feel like you needed to play a character that had that elevation that could jump over certain walls. But the characters that could jump over those walls did get that advantage and were able to sometimes escape getting ganked, for example. Predecessor has this too, yet it just didn't really strike me the right way. I just didn't feel like the verticality came into play too often, and maybe that's just because of the current hero pool that Predecessor had in the closed alpha. And when I was playing in the closed alpha, it was also a little difficult to distinguish on the map between what was a wall and what was an actual entryway into the lane, whereas I feel with the Fault map design, they clearly labeled where it was drops and where it was entries into lanes. But when it comes to the general map design and jungle that I saw between the two games, I preferred Fault. So the last question is the game fun to play? Does it give you that Paragon vibe, the Paragon feeling? And to me, this answer is a bit more complicated than yes or no. In Predecessor, it felt more like I was playing the original Paragon, where the map was modeled a lot around Monolith when it came to the river buffs, the river, and the mid lane, with some inspiration from Legacy in mind within the jungle itself, excluding the Orb Prime Pit and the Fangtooth Pit. The objectives in Predecessor really caught my eye. I liked the way that they initiated team fights, and it felt really good, with nice death animations coming from Fangtooth and Orb Prime. There was also nice death animations when it came from the characters, and that did feel a bit more polished as well, adding to the nice visuals mentioned in the first breakdown part. And so all the stuff put together really made it feel like I was back on Monolith V42, just like I said a week ago and 2 weeks ago when I first started talking about Predecessor Closed Alpha as it was approaching. It still feels a lot like Paragon, as you may or may not know it, with a little bit of a difference here and there. Some things are different, some things feel a little different when it came to, again, the feedback and stuff. Some things could be tiring up, some things felt really good when it came to the differences as well. For example, Orb Prime felt like it wasn't just super duper overpowered when you did get the buff, which was definitely a nice needed change from how it used to be. Post V42 Monolith, if you got Orb Prime, you were basically OP, as the initials stated. However, Fault feels like something different. Fault feels like an evolution, so to speak, of the Paragon spirit. It doesn't necessarily feel exactly how Paragon used to feel. It's still there. It's still a little there. You can still kind of tell. But you can also tell that Strange Matter Studios are trying to do something very different and very original with their trajectory of their game. They're trying to evolve it past what Paragon was. They're trying to take influences from other MOBAs that have been successful in the past, specifically pulling a lot of inspiration from League of Legends, for example, with items such as Smite and Boots being in the game, and mechanics being based around that. And they're just trying to build a brand new thing that really feels like a sequel to Paragon, in my opinion. Yes, you still have your memorable characters and similar playstyles, but their kits have all been updated, passives have all been put in, and some reworks have been made that make the game more exciting to play when you have almost no passive abilities on your characters. Remember, in Paragon, you'd have multiple characters, for example, like Murdoch, who literally had 2 passives in his kit instead of having active abilities that you can use and interact with and use to counterplay your opponent with. And Strange Matter Studios is really trying to look ahead with that when it comes to it. It also seems like they're trying to build their game from the ground up to be something that can live in the competitive space when it comes to the third-person MOBA scene. They're trying to build a competitor that can last a long, long time like League has, based around the esports aspect and the competitive nature of MOBAs. And this is, to me at least, really, really exciting. Now, a lot of people just enjoy playing Paragon casually, and they don't really care about all that stuff. They don't want things to get too complex. They don't like the deep item system. They just want the regular card system back. They don't want all the deep strategies and thinking about competitive and ranked mode. They don't want to worry about how the meta changes and how the abilities have changed. They just want their characters back. Some people just want their favorite maps back, and some people just want Paragon back as it was and as they remember. Some people wanted more than what Paragon was, and they saw more potential in Paragon, and they wanted to see it grow even farther. And so those two different mentalities, I believe, are illustrated perfectly in the split between Predecessor's game design philosophy and Fault's game design philosophy at the core of it. I told you guys, I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I really do believe that this is just the root of the discussion and sometimes the argument. And this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to think that I'm right just because I have a lot of viewers on YouTube. That doesn't mean anything. You are your own person and you can make your own decision. And I implore you, when you ask me the question, which one should I play? I implore you to play both, because both games are good. Both games have their ups and both games have their downs. And when you play them both, you will make the decision for yourself and really see if all you wanted was that old school Paragon gameplay again, or if you wanted something you didn't even know you wanted, and that is an evolution to the Paragon spirit moving forward. I really, really hope you guys take that seriously. Please, try it out. There's no point in getting tribal at this point in time, especially when the quote-unquote race just started. I see people harassing each other, calling each other names, just being very, very vulgar, as if we're talking about politics or religion when we're just talking about our favorite video game coming back. That's all we want, really? Right? That's all we want. We just want to play our favorite game of Paragon again. But when it comes down to it, these different design studios, these different developers have different images in their head of what Paragon could have been and what it should be in the future. Not just what it could have been in 2018, but what it could be in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and moving forward. It's all about that long-term vision, because neither of these studios want the same thing that happened to Paragon. They don't want a short-term thing. They don't want Paragon to die again. They want to keep it running for as long as possible. And so there's no point to jump into conclusions at this point in time, which one is better and which one is not. I said a lot of things of what I liked about Predecessor, what I didn't like about Fault. And I said a lot of things about what I liked about Fault and what I didn't like about Predecessor. And I hope you guys realize that when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you just have to make your own decision. So all I can say is good luck and have fun. That was my opinion. That was just my honest opinion. Or just thinking about it all weekend, playing both these games back to back. If you don't like it, you don't have to agree with it. It's a free country. You guys can do whatever you want. That's the beauty of it. But I hope you can at least appreciate me taking time out of the day to really just lay it out all there for you. For the ones who really, really were asking me the same question over and over and over as we streamed 30 plus hours this weekend, both games combined. Which one should I play? Which one do you like better? I think they both have their ups. I think they both have their downs. Predecessor just announced another closed alpha weekend next weekend from the release of this video. Vault Early Access is not going away and will be available during the weekdays. You guys have plenty of time to play it and plenty of time to enjoy both of these games. And I will be playing both of them as they come back around 4th and stuff. And even when Predecessor leaves closed alpha, we'll see what happens then. If they have an early access or an open alpha or whatever it's going to be, I'll be around keeping an eye on these games, covering news, making builds, making guide videos, making tutorial videos, stuff like that, because that's just what I do. And I really hope you guys stick around and enjoy the ride, because we're all searching and we're all just trying to figure it out. And there you have it. That was my comparison between Predecessor and Fault. And maybe we'll come back to it a month from now. Maybe we'll give it 3 months. Maybe we'll give it 6 months. See what happens. But for now, that's the answer to your question. And I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please consider dropping a like. Make sure to go ahead and follow me on Twitch, as I do stream each and every single day, 2 p.m. PDT. And also, don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell, please, so you never miss another Paragon 2, Predecessor, Fault, whatever you want to call it, video. And as always, make sure I have a wonderful day. Peace. Wait, I have infinite right clicks, but they don't do damage for shit.